A very good afternoon to one and all. On behalf of Bahai Academy and Department of Education and Extension, Savitribai Phule, Pune University, I welcome one and all the participants to the third day of workshop on research methodology. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome and introduce to you all today's resource person, Dr. Shefali Pandya. Uh, She is currently Professor and Head, Department of Education, University of Mumbai. She has done BSc Statistics, MA Sociology, MEd, PhD in Education, and also PhD in Management. She has also done PG Diploma in Management and Education. Madam has a vast experience of 30 years of teaching and experience at postgraduate level is 9.5 years of administrative experience also. She had got a very vast international exposure, traveled to 9 countries for presenting her research work, research papers, participating in panel discussion and as a guest speaker such as UK, USA, Australia, France, South Africa, Japan, Thailand, Singapore and Nepal. She has many academic achievements. She has been a guide, PhD guide, successfully guided 41 PhD students. Number of MPhil students, 15. She has many books published, 16 books she has published. Almost 136 number of papers published. She has been invited as keynote speaker for so many different programs. She had, to her credit, 2 independent research projects funded by UGC, major research projects funded by UGC. She has a vast experience of university administration. She has been holding many positions at the university level. Madam has been a member of editorial board and reviewer of different journals, 15 different journals. To name a few, she has been a reviewer on World Journal of Education, Canada, reviewer on Journal of Social Science Studies, USA, Journal of Eurasian Society of Educational Research, USA, and the list is quite big. It's very difficult to read each and every and she has also organized many seminars, conferences, workshops, and webinars. There are more than 26 seminars, conferences organized by Madam. And her achievements are really too many. It's very difficult to actually read each and every achievement. Madam's CV will also be shared with you all on the WhatsApp groups. So I welcome Madam for her talk today.
Thank you so much. At the outset, I wish everyone a very good afternoon and thank Bahai Academy for inviting me here to be with all of you. I believe this also involves Pune University's Department of Education and Extension. So I extend my thanks to them too. And I will be talking about research design. Could I please know which kind of sessions have been taken before this?
Yes, madam. Previously, 2 sessions held. Day before yesterday, Professor Dr. Sanjeev Sonone sir, he spoke about types of the research, and yesterday, Professor Dr. Kavita Salukya madam, she spoke about basic concepts of research.
Okay, yes, thank you so much. So I'll be talking about research design today. first of all, let us talk about the meaning of research design. It refers to the plan, structure, and strategy of research. It's the blueprint that will guide the research process. So just as before preparing a lesson, we prepare a lesson plan. So similarly, before before going ahead with conducting our research, we develop a research design. So it has everything. It has the structure of research, strategy of research, plan of research, the approach to. The second definition says that it is a set of advanced decisions that make up the master plan, specifying methods and procedures for collecting and analyzing the needed information. Later on in one of the slides, I will also talk about the difference between research research methodology and research method. So that time I'll talk about it. Here it says that it includes methods and procedures for collecting and analyzing the needed information. It's a master plan. Why do we need a research design? Every problem and research objective will be unique because each research topic is different, each research problem is different. The methodology that we use for conducting that research is also different. So every problem is unique and research objective is also unique. But there are some similarities that allow us to make some decisions in advance about the best plan to resolve them. Though topics are unique, we still can have a common plan, and that is research design. There are basic social science research designs, including education, that can be successfully matched or successfully adopted or used or adapted to given problems and research objectives, and they serve the researcher like the blueprint that serves the builder or the lesson plan that serves the prospective teacher. What is it that let us see? It's a blueprint, it's a plan, it's a guide, and it's a framework, all in one. What does it involve? It involves a series of rational decision-making choices. So first of all, we decide the paradigm. There are 5 types of paradigms. First is the positivist paradigm that was adopted from the scientific research, the science, the research in natural sciences, the pure sciences. The next comes post-positivist. Some researchers, especially in fields like sociology, felt that positivist paradigm is more suitable for sciences, pure sciences or natural sciences, because in those sciences 2 + 2 is always 4. In other words, they have one single reality, whereas in social sciences there is no one single reality, there are multiple realities. And therefore the post-positivist paradigm emerged initially in the field of sociology, especially for conducting surveys, open-ended surveys. So that was second paradigm, post-positivist paradigm. The third was constructivist or interpretivist paradigm. Still, some other fields in social sciences felt that even post-positivist paradigm is not suitable for social science research, including education, and therefore constructivist paradigm came, where we collect data and the analysis emerges from data. It is it has multiple realities, and we do not start with structured tools for collecting data. Rather, we use unstructured techniques of data collection like observation or interviews, and we construct knowledge after data are collected from data without using any structured closed-ended tools. So that was the third paradigm. The fourth paradigm was advocacy or transformative paradigm or participative paradigm. 3 names are there, more or less means the same: transformative, participative, or advocacy, because some researchers felt that when we are investing so much of time, energy and money in conducting research, that research should involve those who are going to benefit from the research. So it should involve participants of the research study, and therefore the term used was participative research. It should advocate some changes in their life for improvement, so the term advocacy research, and it should transform their lives for the better, so transformative research. Most of the transformative, okay, then the next was pragmatism as a paradigm, which believed that we are not concerned with the cause of a phenomenon, we are only concerned with what effect it has, and therefore that methodology works which is the best, and therefore this is known as pragmatic paradigm. Now this brings into picture the approaches. There are three major approaches. I would rather say four major approaches. One is the quantitative approach. Second is the qualitative approach. The third is the multi-method approach. And the fourth is mixed methods approach. The first paradigm that I mentioned, positivist paradigm, makes use of quantitative research. Because there is one single reality, we use structured closed-ended tools like rating scales, which can be converted into hard numbers, numerical data by scoring. So that approach is quantitative approach, and it belongs to the positivist paradigm that we have adopted from natural sciences. The next approach is qualitative approach, which comes under the third paradigm, namely constructivist or interpretivist paradigm. The third one, namely multi-methods research, would be either there will be two phases of the research and both would be quantitative, or there will be two or more phases of research, both would be qualitative. So multi-methods may go either to quantitative approach or to qualitative approach, or the positivist paradigm or the constructivist paradigm. However, the mixed methods approach is such where every research study is conducted in two or more phases, and one of the phases is quantitative, either first or second, and the other phase is qualitative. So it combines the qualitative as well as the quantitative approach, and it generally falls into the fourth paradigm, namely transformative paradigm or advocacy paradigm or participative paradigm. Often our action research also comes into this, but action research is not the only one which falls into the mixed methods research. It can also fall into the pragmatic approach. These days, many of us are talking about developmental research. Earlier, the term developmental research was used with reference to a human being's development, physical development, language development, moral development, psychological development, cognitive development. But now, these days, after technological invasion, the term developmental research is used more often for development of a process or a product. And when we are doing that kind of research, it usually falls into the category of the fifth paradigm, namely pragmatist paradigm. So here I have spoken about 5 paradigms: positivist paradigm, post-positivist paradigm, constructivist or interpretivist paradigm, transformative or participatory or advocacy paradigm, and pragmatism paradigm. We have spoken about 4 approaches: quantitative approach, which falls under positivist paradigm; qualitative approach, which falls under constructivist or interpretivist paradigm. Multi-methods research approach, which can be either quantitative or qualitative, and mixed methods approach, which is in its own way can be either into the fourth one, that is transformative advocacy or participatory, or it could also fall into the fifth, pragmatist paradigm. All the developmental researches these days that are conducted, where we develop a process or a product and test its effectiveness, generally falls under the fifth paradigm, namely pragmatist paradigm. Now this leaves out one question. I have given 5 paradigms, and I only here, as far as approaches are concerned, I spoke only about 4 paradigms. I did not mention post-positivist paradigm. It is because whenever we are conducting open-ended surveys, where the tool is open-ended in a survey, we collect verbal data in long words and long sentences, in long paragraphs from people, and then convert those responses into numbers or frequencies. And our report writing of the dissertation or thesis is exactly the same way that is followed by a positivist paradigm. There, that is in a open-ended, unstructured survey that falls into post-positivist paradigm, and therefore I didn't match it with any kind of approach as such. So this is about the first point in types of investigation. As far as research design is concerned, we first of all choose which paradigm are we using: quantitative, positivist, post-positivist, constructivist, transformative, or pragmatist. First of all, we need to decide our paradigm. Having decided our paradigm, we decide our approach. We decide whether we are going to conduct quantitative research, qualitative research, multi-methods research approach, or mixed methods approach. Pune University often relies on multi-methods research. They conduct a research to find out the present situation, and on that basis, they have a second phase where they conduct other things that have been included in the research problem. In my department, predominantly earlier, say about 10-15 years back, we used to predominantly use the quantitative approach. Of course, some ethnographic and studies and grounded theories research were conducted before 15 years. But in the last 15 years, we have slightly shifted our emphasis to qualitative research or mixed methods research. But that depends on the guide and the students. We cannot force anyone to conduct any, to adopt any specific paradigm or any specific approach. These are decided as per the type of research problem. Then the next point is purpose of the study. What is the purpose? Why are you conducting this study? What are you going to get at the end of this research? Then we determine the research methodology. Then the extent of researcher interference, if it is qualitative or if it is quantitative, that will decide the researcher's interference. The setting of the study, the units of analysis. Is your unit of analysis a specific student? Are you going to take into account student as the unit of analysis? Or are you going to compare classrooms? If you are going to compare classrooms, it will be the classroom as the unit of analysis. Are you going to conduct analysis of schools? Then the school will be the unit of analysis. And there are large-scale studies, especially done in countries like US, which compare different countries on a specific set of criteria. Then the unit of analysis would be the country. So we need to decide units of analysis. 99.9% of researches in India use student or the teacher, individual student or the individual teacher as the unit of analysis. However, if we wish We can broaden our horizons and then compare schools or compare classrooms, compare states of India, or maybe compare different states, at least in Southeast Asia or South Asia. So we need to now shift our emphasis, shift our focus from student or teacher as the unit of analysis and go ahead and widen our horizon and look beyond schools, beyond states, and look beyond the country and see what is happening in South Asia, Southeast Asia, or maybe beyond that, international levels. If we want to improve our country, improve the quality of education, we need to look beyond us, beyond India, and compare and see. In that case, your unit of analysis will be country and the time horizon of the study. If you are going to conduct research on what is happening at present, you are conducting a descriptive study. If your time horizon is about the past, then it will be a historical research. And if you want to know that if I change one variable, what will be its effect on another variable, if I modify or change or manipulate one variable, what will be its effect on another variable, then that will be experimental study. So this will be time horizon of the study. If you answer these questions clearly, then your research design also is a very effective and efficient one. Efficacious rather. Okay. Now, research methodology and research method. What is the difference? One, let's take research methodology first. It explains the overarching theoretical and philosophical frameworks which guide the research, which in other words I mentioned earlier, whether you believe that there is one single reality or are there multiple realities. Do you believe that hard numerical data will give you good results, or do you believe that soft verbal data would give you better results? Or do you believe that the combination of the two would be better? Do you believe that knowledge is constant, or do you believe that knowledge emerges and changes? So these are your philosophical and theoretical frameworks which guides your research process. Research methodology works as a framework within which you work, within which you conduct your research. It is even accurate to consider it as the inception of the research study. So it has to be decided at the beginning of your study, not after your proposal gets accepted by research and recognition committee. For various researches, the researcher can employ different methodologies so that the same research problem can be looked at from different angles. It can use different methods, techniques, and even perspectives. I'll give you one example. You are conducting a research study of an ethnographical research study of some municipal schools in Mumbai. It's an ethnographic study. And you find that the BMC school or municipal school's culture has specific dimensions. So the same study, you are studying culture of municipal schools. Now, that was done through ethnography, a qualitative research approach. You want to know whether you get the same findings when you conduct the same research using structured tool, closed-ended tool. So you can prepare a rating scale which measures culture of schools, especially BMC schools, and then administer that tool to a large sample and then see whether you can get different answers or the same. Alternatively, I have studied school culture in BMC schools using ethnography. Somebody can conduct a similar study maybe in Pune or maybe in Kolhapur or maybe in Nagpur or maybe in Jalgaon and see whether we get the same results. We can study the same thing from different angles. We can study school culture. I have studied it from students' perspectives. Maybe somebody else can study it from teachers' perspectives, and somebody else may study it from principals' perspectives. So we are studying different angles, different perspectives. We are using different approaches and methods and techniques for data collection. So that is also quite possible. And then when you are deciding your research methodology, you have to decide out of these choices that I mentioned, which methodology you would like to choose and use in your research study. On the other hand, research methods is concerned with the methods used for data collection in your research. So are you going to conduct a survey with unstructured tools or a survey with structured tools? Are you going to conduct open-ended interviews? Are you going to conduct a structured interview schedule for conducting your interviews? Are you going to use focus group interviews? Are you going to conduct online interviews? Are you going to conduct case studies where you use observation or document analysis or interview schedules or interviews? Are you going to use observation as a technique? Are you going to conduct experiments? So this is what is included in the research methods. So I hope I am very clear about what is research methodology and what is the meaning of research methods. Now let us look at components of research design. I would suggest if you have any questions, you can put them right away in the chat box. I would answer them on the spot rather than answering all of them at the end of the session, because that will make it better. And if you wish to ask questions, you can also open your raise your hand or just open your mic and ask me questions. That would be a better idea. I'm opening my chat so that I know if you have a question. I'll keep the chat open.
Ma'am, there is a question to please
Yes.
explain a little bit difference between the multi-method and mixed method in research.
Could you speak a little louder, please?
Ma'am, there is a question on a difference between multi-method and mixed method in research.
In multi-method research, either you can use, there will be two phases of research, or maybe three also, but in all phases you use either quantitative research or you use only qualitative research. You cannot mix the two, one quantitative and one qualitative. For example, you conduct a structured survey in the first phase and experimental research in the second phase. That will be multi-method. Or you use a case study in the first phase, and in the second phase you conduct a grounded theory design. That would be qualitative research in both the phases, so that will be multi-method. But alternatively, in mixed methods, for example, there is one ashram shala and the children need some help. If you feel that the children need some help, so in that case you do case study of that ashram shala, find out what are the limitations, weaknesses and needs of the students and teachers in the first phase. That case study is a qualitative case study, and based on the findings of that you identify some needs of the students, and in the second phase you conduct a quantitative experiment and fulfill the needs of the students. For example, through that qualitative case study you conducted in the first phase, you realize that students require some computer training, they require some communication skills, and they require some boost to their self-confidence. So you prepare an intervention program where you can enhance their communication skills, you can enhance their self-confidence, and you also provide them some other skills that they need in the quantitative experiment. So in the first phase, you have used qualitative case study, and in the second phase, you have used a quantitative experiment. So in one phase, you have done quantitative research, other phase, you have done qualitative research. So two approaches, quantitative plus qualitative, you have used together in one study. So that becomes mixed methods research. Am I clear? Or you want one more example?
Yes, madam.
Am I clear?
Yes, madam, it's clear.
Any other question?
There is another question from Victor Prasad Movali. He wants one more example to make the difference between the research methodology and research methods.
Research method is concerned with how you collect your data. What techniques tools and techniques you collect your data and you analyze. So that will decide whether you want to use structured tools or unstructured tools, whether you want to use a rating scale, open-ended questionnaire or semi-structured questionnaire or a structured questionnaire. You want to use interview. I mentioned earlier, whether you want to use structured interview schedule, whether you want to conduct unstructured interviews, whether you want to use focus group interviews, whether you want to use online interviews, whether you want to conduct an experiment. So these are all methods. But when you decide your paradigm and your approaches, that is your methodology.
Yeah,
Any other? The two are interlinked. Any other question?
No, madam, you can continue.
Is this clear or you want one more example?
I hope it's clear, yes.
Yeah, okay. Let me see in what other questions you have in mind. I cannot see your questions.
No, madam is not able to see the questions on the chat box.
Sorry?
Ma'am, do you have any problem with this chat box? Can you see your chat box?
1 minute, huh?
Yeah, right side it is there.
Yeah, I know. One minute, huh? I'll see the chat box.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I can see the chat box now. That's okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. I think one more question is there in the chat box.
What types of methodology is used for closed-ended question? For closed-ended questionnaire, when you are using, it's a quantitative research. And when you are using open-ended, it could be a survey research. Especially since you are mentioning that you are using a questionnaire. But if you are using observation or interview, it could be qualitative research. So open-ended questionnaire will be post-positivist research, survey, and closed-ended questions could also be a structured closed-ended survey, exploratory survey kind of a thing. Open-ended questionnaire will give you explanatory survey. Okay. Yeah. Next, components of a research design. First component is your paradigm. Second component is your approach. Then you decide what kind of information you need. Then you decide whether you want to conduct exploratory research, descriptive research, causal research. So what kind of research you want to do? Specify the measurement and scaling procedures, whether you want to measure something using soft verbal data through multiple perspectives, or whether you want to have hard numerical data with one single perspective. Then are you going to use rating scales, ranking scales, Are you going to use structured tools, semi-structured tools, unstructured tools? Are you going to use ready-made tools? Are you going to construct your own tools and instruments? Are you going to conduct a pre-test of the tool to decide its uh, reliability and validity? Are you going to specify the sampling process? You have to, in fact, specify the sampling process and the sample size. In quantitative research, these sampling process and sample size would be very precise. In qualitative research, it may change as you proceed with your research because you may use theoretical sampling. You have to develop a plan of data analysis, both for quantitative research, what statistical techniques are you going to use for data analysis, descriptive data analysis, inferential data analysis, and so on. Whereas for qualitative research, you have to decide whether you are going to use a constant comparative method, are you going to use analytical induction, are you going to use triangulation. So these are essential that you decide them in advance. There is one question. Theoretical sampling. What is theoretical sampling? It is used only in qualitative research. In qualitative research, you conduct interviews or you conduct observations, and a time comes when you realize that more interviews will not add anything more to your data. You are saturated with your data. You realize that there is no point in conducting any more interviews or any more observations because you are going to get repeatedly the same data. You are not going to get anything new. So when you realize this, that you have come to a saturation point, additional data collection will not serve any purpose. That is known as theoretical sampling. Am I clear? Is it okay? No reply?
Yes, madam. Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, then we now talk about, you want to know that there is any necessary to compare both types of sampling design like open and see, open-ended and closed-ended are types of questionnaires that has nothing to do with sample. Sampling is different and types of questionnaires is different. What is your exact questionnaire? Can you repeat the question?
And the question says, I want to know that is there any necessary to
That I have read. I have read the question.
both types of samples? Yeah. Question.
What about questionnaires? Questionnaires can be of three types. If your questionnaire asks about questions, I'm giving you some example. Why are you attending this research methodology workshop? 1, to gain knowledge. 2, because I have free time. 3, because it is a necessity for as pre-PhD coursework. 4th, I want to become a better researcher. 5th, I want to become a better research guide. So 5 options are given and you choose from these 5 options. So you only have to put a tick mark. That is called a closed-ended structured questionnaire. Instead of this, I ask you one question. Why have you decided to do undertake this research methodology workshop? I don't give you any options, but I give a lot of space, about 8-10 sentences, and you write a paragraph or 2 paragraphs or maybe 3 paragraphs in your own words why you are doing this research methodology workshop. I have not given you any put a tick mark. You have to write in your own words, 2-3 paragraphs. That is open-ended questionnaire. And sometimes you use a semi-structured questionnaire where some questions are multiple choice and you only have to put tick marks, and other questions are open-ended where you write your own paragraphs in your own words. So structured and closed questionnaires means the same, where a question is asked and some choices are given to you, you have to put a tick mark. Open-ended or unstructured questionnaire means the same. same 2 words for the same thing, and you have to answer in your own words, write paragraphs. And semi-structured means some questions are closed-ended, some are open-ended. Next question is, if we collect closed-ended questionnaire, then we need to do quantitative research. No, closed-ended means quantitative and open-ended means qualitative research. And if you have a research study in 2 phases, one phase is in the one phase you collect quantitative data, and the second phase you collect qualitative data. Then it is a mixed methods research. I gave you one example of mixed method research. I have an ashram shala. I do a qualitative case study through observation. I sit in the school from morning to evening 4 times a week for 6 months, 1 full term, 1 full semester. Observe what is going on. Talk to students, talk to teachers, talk to principals, and find out what are the lacuna, limitations, needs of the students. So that is qualitative case study. Now, based on this, I identify some students' lacuna and limitations. So I prepare an intervention program to remove those lacuna or limitations. I conduct a quantitative experiment in the second phase. So then in the first phase, I've got a qualitative case study. In the second phase, I do a quantitative experiment. That is a mixed method research. Am I clear now? Am I clear?
Yes, madam. The answer is yes, yes. There is another question coming up.
I don't want to rush. Who asked this question? Priya Kale. Are you clear about my answer?
Yes, ma'am. Got it.
Yeah. There is one more question. Madam, if I want to find out about the problems of Bengali students in English language acquisition, what methodology should the students be the unit of analysis? Yes. If you want to find out students' problems, the student is the unit of analysis. There are several ways in which you can do this. One, you can conduct an exploratory survey. But I would suggest you can do a multi-methods research here. You can conduct a quantitative exploratory survey to find out problems of English language acquisition in the first phase. And in the second phase, based on these problems, you prepare an intervention program where these problems are removed. And they acquire English language more effectively. So you conduct an experiment. So I would suggest for this kind of a study, a multi-methods research in first, an exploratory survey to find out problems, and second, quantitative research to remove the problems. That would be an ideal situation. Am I clear? This is Lipton Prasad, right? Am I clear about this? Have you followed?
Yes, madam.
Hello?
He has replied yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll go ahead. Types of research design. Traditionally, there are 3 categories. One is you explore, you find out what's happening. What is people's opinion? What are people's problems? What are people's needs? That is an exploratory survey. Needs analysis is also an exploratory survey. The second one is to describe. The second is to description. You describe what is happening. That is descriptive research. And the third is causal. Descriptive research need not be only survey. Of course, there can be a survey, but it also includes correlational research. It also includes ex post facto research. You can also conduct research to describe culture. So ethnography can come here. You can also conduct research to a case study. So that also can be descriptive research to describe what happens to a particular case. So that is a case study. Or the last one is causal, which talks about cause and effect relationship, and it is essentially experimental in nature. So these are three traditional categories of research. The new one also includes developmental research, where you develop something new and test its effectiveness. So that is the latest one. I am only here including some traditional categories. The choice of the most appropriate design depends largely on the objectives of the research and how much is known about the problem and the research objective. So that will decide your research design. And how much is known about the research problem could be understood through empirical literature review and conceptual literature review. Okay, let's talk about basic research objectives and research design. First, to gain background information, to define terms, to clarify problems and hypotheses, to establish research priority, you may conduct an exploratory survey. You can also conduct excuse me, phenomenological research. For example, what is understood as leadership? How do teachers define leadership? What do teachers understand as the meaning of leadership? That would be an exploratory research. The design is exploratory, but the research method that you are using could be phenomenological research. So exploratory research can be quantitative, it can also be qualitative research. Second, to describe and measure marketing phenomena at a point in time. These days, schools are also indulging in marketing phenomena. They are keeping website where you write review about the school, you give likes and dislikes. It is nothing but marketing. There are schools who prepare their videos, nothing but marketing. That appropriate design is descriptive. And to determine causality, if X is changed, what happens to Y? That is causal or cause and effect relationship, and predominantly it is experimental research. Okay, let's classify research design. Exploratory research design. I gave you a lot of examples here. What do teachers understand by the term leadership? What do students understand by an effective school? What do teachers understand by an effective school? Whether B.Ed should be a 4-year integrated program, you are trying to explore. So that's an exploratory research. And the other term that is used is conclusive research design, which can be descriptive or cause and effect research relationship, which descriptive could be cross-sectional or longitudinal. Cross-sectional and longitudinal, I'll give you examples. You want to study language development in a child. You identify 5 children who are born, who are today 6 months old. And you follow the same 5 children for till the age of 2.5. So for 2 years, you keep on observing the same children. So now they are 6 months, at 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, 12, 10 months, 11, 12, 1 year, 1 year, 1 month, 1 year, 2 months, and so on till they turn 2.5. You are spending 2 years in data collection for the same 5 children. That is longitudinal because you are observing the same 5 children for a long period of time. Now, this requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of time and energy. You have to focus only on those 5 children for 2 years. Put aside everything else. Not everyone can handle this. So, you take 10 children who are 6 months old, 10 children who are 9 months old, 10 who are 12 months old, 10 who are 15 months, 18 months, 21 months and 24 months and 27 months and 30 months. And then you compare them. That is cross-sectional design. And then you have single cross-sectional design where you keep only one variable in focus like language development, or you have multiple cross-sectional design where you keep in mind not only their language development, but their cognitive development, their numerical development, their physical development. So 3-4 other aspects you take, that becomes multiple cross-sectional designs. So this is a very broad classification. Of course, it is not very comprehensive, but it gives an understanding and you can have a broad outline of what is the classification of research design. Any additional questions? Yes, there are 3 chats. Somebody is getting disturbance. If you can mute mic. Longitudinal study I have explained, but I will explain once again since you want it. I want to study how language development in children takes place. Generally, children don't learn language, don't learn to speak at the age of 6. So they're 6 months. So you select 5 children who are 6 months old, all 5 are 6 months old. And periodically, every month you keep on observing whether they've learned to speak. And for the same 5 children, you observe them for 2 years and then try to understand what do they, how their language develops. The same 5 children, you observe them for 2 years, you take interviews of them for 2 years, that is longitudinal study. So you select a small sample, maybe 5 children, and you are with those 5 children for 2 years to understand how their language develops. So that is longitudinal study. Am I clear? Am I clear? Interdisciplinary study, what kind of research design is needed? Okay, I'll give you one example. In my university, one professor wanted to work, he was from life sciences, and he wanted to understand crops. He selected one agrarian area in Maharashtra. He went there and conducted interviews of those people who were living there and those who were farmers, especially farmers, and asked them what were their problems, and also tried to find out from them, according to those farmers, what were solutions. Then he suggested them some methods of agriculture which would increase their agricultural production. So when the farmers spoke about their problems, they didn't speak only about agrarian problems, but they spoke about their personal problems. They also spoke about how to get good price for their production. And his suggestion also included all. So it was not purely a life science, it also included economic aspects, because when you want to sell your products, it is economic. So this was a interdisciplinary research, and this is how he conducted. He conducted, first phase was a quantitative survey and second phase was an experiment. Am I clear? So he conducted a multi-methods research. See, threat of maturation, etc., are in experimental research and in quantitative research. In qualitative research, we do not have threat of maturation, etc., because we are studying maturation itself. When we are studying maturation itself, we cannot remove it quantitatively. See, the removal of threat of maturation comes only in quantitative research, not in qualitative research. So I go to the next slide now. What is exploratory and what is conclusive research? Let's see the difference. The objectives. Exploratory research objective is to provide insight and understanding. Just understand what people want or what is happening. Whereas in conclusive research, you test hypotheses, examine relationships, compare groups. So that's conclusive research. You are not interested in finding out only what is happening, but you want to establish relationships, you want to compare in conclusive research. Whereas in explorative research, you only want to find out what's happening. Characteristics. In exploratory research, information is needed. Information needed is defined loosely. Research process is flexible and unstructured. Sample is small and non-representative. Whereas in conclusive research, you require specific information and you know what kind of specific information you want. Your research process is formal and structured and decided in advance. There is no flexibility. Sample is large and representative. Findings or results. In exploratory research, analysis of primary data is qualitative and it is tentative. Why do we call it tentative? When you take a small sample, what is happening in a large city, a metropolitan city like Mumbai, may not be happening exactly in the same way in a very small village in Darbhanga. So results are tentative. Whereas in conclusive research, data analysis is quantitative, sample size is very large, so analysis is conclusive. Outcome. In exploratory research, generally outcome is generally followed by further exploratory research or conclusive. So it is the first phase in a either multi-methods research or mixed methods research, whereas conclusive research findings are input used for making decisions. So this is the difference. Again, any question you may ask. Please ask if you have a question. Change management or knowledge management practice. For knowledge management practices, you can either prepare a quantitative tool, administer it to a large number of schools, to teachers, and understand it. That would be quantitative research. But you can also select a small number of institutes, do observation there for say 6 months, minimum 100 hours, stretched over a period of time of 6 months. Then that will be qualitative research. Depending on the time available, you can select any of the approaches. Both are appropriate. Why the primary data in qualitative? Primary data can be used in both researches, quantitative or qualitative research. Someone wants to know, Priya wants to know what is the meaning of tentative results. I have given one example. I'm giving one more example. Since my findings are based on very small, can I generalize the findings to a large sample?
Actually, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
If my sample size is only 5, can I generalize the findings to the entire world? And therefore, in the next one, it is I've written that if your sample, if your findings based on a small sample, you can do a follow-up by conducting a quantitative research to match whether you, for five sample size what you got, are you getting the same through quantitative or conclusive research? Am I now clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. There is one more in the chat. What is an empirical study? Okay, I'll give an example. You may believe in the existence of God, right? Do you believe in God? Open your mic and please answer. Do you believe in God?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Can you prove his existence by measuring him, by touching him, or by listening to him?
No.
No. So that's metaphysical. Those phenomena which can be measured, which can be touched, which can be through our five senses, indriya, smelled, or which can be measured, are empirical. So all research studies are empirical in nature. However, in some fields like political science or philosophy, you may not have empirical research, you may have logical research. But most of the descriptive research, exploratory research, and cause-effect researches are empirical. And for such researches, you can use qualitative or quantitative approach. Both are equally correct. Am I clear? Shall I go ahead? Oh, 5 more chats. Yes, empirical meaning practical experiences, observations, and measurement. Next, comparison of basic research designs. I've taken 3 designs: exploratory, descriptive, and causal. Cause and effect. Objective of the first is to discover ideas and insights. Second is to describe market characteristics and functions. In our case, it could be describing school characteristics and functions, teacher characteristics, student characteristics, leadership characteristics, and so on. And causal would be describe or determine cause and effect relationship. If I change one variable, what will be its effect on another variable? The second point is characteristics. Exploratory is flexible and versatile. Descriptive is marked by prior formulation of specific hypotheses. And causal or cause and effect is manipulation of one or more independent variables and to see its effect on dependent variables. Then often the front end of total research design. Descriptive is pre-planned and structured, and cause and effect, you have control, you control some variables, you have moderating variables or mediating variables. Now you look at the methods. You have surveys, you have pilot surveys, you can use secondary data, you can do qualitative research. And descriptive research, you can use secondary data or primary data both. You can conduct surveys, explain descriptive surveys. You can have panel interviews, you can use observation and other forms of data. You can also use things like rating scale, structured questionnaire, structured interviews, structured observation, and so on. And cause and effect, as I mentioned earlier, it is predominantly experimental research. What is exploratory research? Most commonly unstructured informal research that is undertaken at the beginning of a study to gain background information about the general nature of the research problem. What is unstructured? There is no formal predetermined set of objectives, sample plan, or questionnaire. When you conduct an interview, you may pose new questions which you had not decided in advance, or you may change the order of the questions that you ask. That is called unstructured. Suppose you are asking question, other person answers. Based on that answer, you can have additional questions. So that is an example of unstructured interviews. It is usually conducted when the researcher does not know much about the problem. It is usually conducted at the beginning of the research as a first phase. You may have many questions, you have many sources of data, such as you can ask students, you can ask teachers, you can ask principals, you can ask non-teaching staff, you can ask government officers, and so on. you need to define a problem and understand what is that problem. What are its uses? To get background information, to define certain terms, to clarify problems and hypotheses, establish research priorities. As I mentioned earlier, in Pune University, most of the researches have two phases. One is a survey, exploratory survey, with the purpose is to gain background information and clarify problems and hypotheses. You can use a variety of methods to conduct exploratory research. You can collect primary data, you can have secondary data analysis, you can conduct surveys, you can have case studies and its analysis, you can have focus group interviews, you can use projective techniques and so on. Experience surveys. You can find out what is happening, what has happened in the past, was it successful, if yes, why, if no, why, how have things changed, who is involved in the decisions, what problem areas can be seen, whom can we count on to help us or to participate in the research. So this is the example of experience surveys. Focus group. This is relatively new. Two of my students have used focus group interviews. One wanted to understand Paulo Freire's theory and its relevance to Indian teacher education system. He identified some groups. He identified some student teachers, B.Ed students, made their groups, small groups, 6 to 8 participants in one group. He asked them questions and people answered and he recorded everything. It generally lasts for 92 minutes to 2 hours, 1.5 to 2 hours, but sometimes more than 1.5 hours, the participants, the members of the group cannot sustain, they get tired. And you require a skill so that they don't divert the entire topic to some other topic. Another one also recently used focus group interview to find out meaning of secularism in the Indian context. She conducted interviews of college, higher education students to understand what is the meaning of secularism. Another one, third one, conducted focus group interviews separately for art students, science students, and commerce and management students to find out, according to them, what is higher education, what are its advantages and limitations. So that is focus group interviews. So you at a time collect 6 to 8 samples or participants of your study, ask them one question and they will together give you some answers, but you have to ensure discipline so that everyone doesn't talk at the same time. That is focus group interview. Now we come to descriptive research. It is undertaken to describe answers to questions: who has done, who is doing, what is being done, where is it being done, when, and how is being done. If you want to answer such questions, who is the best teacher? Who is an effective teacher? What are the characteristics of an effective teacher? In which type of schools where such effective teachers work? How do effective teachers differ from ineffective teachers? Under what conditions teachers are ineffective? When are teachers ineffective? Descriptive research. I'm giving you one concrete example. Descriptive research is desirable when we wish to project a study's findings to a larger population. That means you want to generalize your findings to a larger population. And for that, you have to ensure that you have a large sample size. Technically, statistically, more than 30 is a large sample size. But if your population is more than 10,000, you require a sample size of about 400 minimum. And in pure statistics, people say that you require more than 1,000 sample if you want to generalize for a larger population. Recently, with one of our former vice chancellors, I conducted a survey during pandemic about students' opinion about whether examination for final year should be conducted or not. And we required a sample size of more than 1000 because we wanted to generalize. So you require a large sample, plus the sample has to be representative. So we ensured that the data were collected from Mumbai University, from North Maharashtra University, from some universities in Vidarbha. There are at least 2 universities, 3 universities in Vidarbha, Nagpur, Amravati and Gadchiroli University. We had some from Pune, not Pune University itself, but at least T.Y. Patil. So population of Pune was involved. And we also wanted to collect data from private university, not all state universities. So we collected data from D.Y. Patil University, so that our sample represents all areas of Maharashtra. And I'm giving some example. There were more institutions also. And also sample included private universities as well as state universities. So this is how, if you want to generalize to a larger sample, your sample size has to be very large and it should be representative of the population. Descriptive studies. You describe population characteristics. You estimate the frequency of characteristics, how often this particular characteristic occurs. You discover correlation or association between variables. So that is, then you have 2 basic classifications, cross-sectional and longitudinal. And since I've already spoken about this, I don't think I would like to repeat. 1 minute. Let's classify descriptive research studies. Cross-sectional studies, they measure units from a sample of the population at only one point in time. I give you examples. From today, 1st October to 31st October, or maybe 1st October to 15th October, within 15 days, I will collect data on language development from children who are 10 children who are 6 years old, 6 months old, 10 children who are 9 months old, 10 children who are 12 months old, 10 children who are 15 months old, 18 months old, 21 months old, 24 months old, 27 months old, and 30 months old. So my sample size would be 90, and I've collected data within 15 days from different age groups. So cross-sectional study. Then you have sample surveys. You can have cross-sectional studies whose samples are drawn in such a way so that you have a representative samples. Another term for sample survey is also synchronic study. All data are collected at one point in time. Within 15 days, you collect data from 10 schools. That is known as synchronic study, which I have not mentioned here, but a term that is used is synchronic study. These studies are usually presented with a margin of error. There can be sampling error, there can be non-sampling error. Cross-sectional studies take snapshots of the population at one. So I've taken 10 6-month-old children and I take data from them. 10 9-month-old and take data from them. That is what I mean here. Longitudinal studies, repeated measurement from the same 5 children over a period of 1 month and covering 2 years for data collection. Methodologically, longitudinal studies are superior to cross-sectional studies. Cause and effect analysis. If I modify, adapt, or manipulate or change X, then what happens to Y? If I change my methodology of teaching, what happens to students' academic performance? If I change leadership style, what happens to teachers' job satisfaction and motivation? So these are experimental research where there is a cause. Teaching method is the cause and students' academic performance is the effect. Leadership style is the cause and teachers' motivation and teachers' job satisfaction is the effect. So you study the effect of the cause, the effect of the cause on the dependent variable, effect of the independent variables on the dependent variables. So that is cause and effect relationship. They are conducted through the use of experiments. See here, a small child doesn't understand what is the cause and what is the effect. In a flight, the pilot announces that it is all of you better wear your seat belt. Here the cause is the disturbance in the flight and effect is putting the seat belt. But the child feels that whenever the seat belt is tied, there is a disturbance. So he is confused about the cause and the effect. So we need to be very clear about the cause and effect. Which comes first is the cause and which happens later is the effect. So both to fluctuate together is symmetrical. Both may influence each other is reciprocal and both may be asymmetrical. No relationship with each other. I'll give an example of reciprocal influence. It is not always that leadership style influences teacher motivation or teacher job satisfaction or teacher behavior. It is sometimes also mutually influencing. Teacher behavior can also influence leadership style. After a longer administrative experience, you sometimes realize that these teachers are aggressive and therefore you need to change your leadership style to handle them. So that is an example of mutual influence. What is asymmetrical? Changes in one variable is responsible for changes in the other. The relatively unalterable variable is the independent one and the independent variable comes first in time. It happens first and then the dependent variable is there, comes into picture. No chat. Okay, fine. Asymmetrical cause and effect relationship. There is a stimulus, there is a response. National education policy and effectiveness of the system or productivity of the system. How many get jobs is productivity of a higher education system. So what is the effect of national policy on education on employability of the students? That is stimulus and response, policy and productivity. Another example, property disposition. Social class and attitude towards environment. Disposition behavior, job satisfaction of teachers and their loyalty or commitment to the school. You are satisfied in the school, so you are loyal to the school, committed to the school, you don't change the job often. Property behavior, social class and reading habits. So these are asymmetrical causal relationships. Okay, now evidence, how do you say that there is cause-effect relationship? Both A and B vary together. When A goes up, B also goes up, or when A goes down, B goes down. Alternatively, when A goes up, B goes down. Covariation. The time order of the event. First A happened, so A is the cause. Then B happened, so B is the effect. No other possible causes. So if A is the cause and B is the effect, it also shows that if A changes, B also changes. Changes in A has taken place first and changes in B have taken place later. And apart from A, B is not influenced by any other variable. Then you can say that A is the cause and B is the effect. So therefore, in experiment, we control several variables. If I am conducting an experiment in a school to find out effect of cooperative learning, model on students' academic performance, then I take two schools. In one, I teach using traditional method, other I teach using cooperative learning method, and I keep several other causes of students' performance constant. For example, in both classes, traditional and correlational model, I teach so that teacher personality variable, teaching style variable remain constant. If I take lectures in control group for 2 periods, then in experimental group also I will take for 2 periods. The curriculum or the content matter will be the same in both the groups. The pre-test and post-test that I use will be the same in both the groups. The socio-economic background of students in both the groups will be equal. If in one group I teach in the morning, in the second group also I will teach in the morning. So I am trying to control all other possible causes of B. Only then I can say that A is the cause, cooperative learning is the cause, and students' performance is the effect. So you manipulate teaching method. In one group, keep traditional method, other group use the cooperative learning method. That means you have manipulated or changed or altered or adapted, altered the teaching method. Then that's an experiment to see how teaching method influences dependent variable. In my example, students' performance is the dependent variable. I have control effects of additional extraneous variables. I gave you examples. Age group of students in both the groups should be the same. Their SES should be the same. Their average IQ should be the same. Content matter should be the same. Time of teaching, number of periods of teaching, teacher personality, all other variables I have tried to control. Those variables which you can control and you can change is independent variable. Those variables over which you have little or no direct control except for changing the independent variable, that is the dependent variable. Extraneous variable, I give you several examples. Time of teaching, duration of teaching, content matter, student characteristics, teacher characteristics are all examples of extraneous variables. Extraneous variables are those variables that can have effect on the dependent variable. In my example, students' academic performance. And all these examples that which I have control of variables, they are not independent variables, but they can influence the dependent variable. They are all examples of extraneous variables. What is an experimental design? You can take two groups. You have 100 students with you. You want to divide them into 50 and 52 batches. One group will be taught using traditional method. Another group will be taught using cooperative learning method. So these 100 students, you will distribute them equally to the two groups. So you call first student and tell him to toss a coin. If he gets head, he will go to group A. And if he gets tail, he will go to group 2. Group B. Second student you call head, group A, tail, group B. So all 100 students you call them, they will toss a coin and accordingly they will go into the two groups. This will be equal probability of going to group A and going to group B. You have used randomization here. You have not used your own biases. Like I like a particular student because he is brilliant, so I'll put him in group A. And another student I don't like because he is not good in studies, so I'll put him in group B. So here my bias is there in allotting students to groups. So that is not proper. You should not be doing it. So I've used tossing of a coin, which is random assignment of students to the two groups. Then I prepare a pre-test on mathematics of selected content matter. I'll first prepare an intervention program. I'll prepare an instructional design to teach using cooperative learning method and an instructional design to teach using traditional method. I'll prepare two parallel tests. Form 1 will be used as a pre-test. Form 2 will be used as a post-test. The difficulty level of mathematics in both the Form 1 and Form 2 will be equal. Number of questions will be equal, number of marks will be equal in Form 1 and Form 2. So before starting my teaching, I will administer Form 1 to both the Group A and Group B. In Group A, I will teach using traditional method. In Group B, I will teach using cooperative learning method. At the end, I will administer Form 2 of my mathematics test to both the groups. I will control all those extraneous variables which I mentioned. If I want, my experiment is over, I have administered my post test. I want to know whether the effect of my teaching is long lasting or not. So maybe after 3 months, I will administer the post test again to see whether my effect of my teaching is consistent over a period of long time, or they have forgotten everything that they have learned. So that also can be done. So this is my experimental design. O is observation or measurement. X is the experimental group. C is the control group. R is the random assignment of subjects to the two groups. E is the experimental effect. You conduct a pre-test. I gave you example. Before teaching, what you administer is your pre-test, and after teaching, your what you administer is the post-test. When you use randomization, it is a true experimental design. When you don't use randomization, then it is either a quasi-experimental design, or sometimes when you don't even have a control group, have one group, single group, then that is pre-experimental design. As far as possible, avoid pre-experimental design. In educational research, it is extremely difficult to use true experimental design. So we use quasi-experimental design because principals will not allow us to assign students randomly to your experimental and control group. The principal will say, you take division A, I'm giving you only division A. And in the other group school, if you go, they'll say, I'm giving you division B, I cannot give you anything else. You have to take what you have. Then the two groups may not be equal in terms of student background variables, their socioeconomic status, their IQ, and so on. So there are some statistical techniques like ANCOA that you can use so that these two groups become equal. So in educational research, very often we cannot use true experimental design. We cannot use randomization. We have to use as it is whatever we get from the principal, but you can use statistical groups to make the two groups equal. A group in which you are teaching using traditional method is control group, and the group in which you are using through a new teaching method is the experimental group. How valid are experiments? I studied from Mumbai University, and then I took up a job also in Mumbai University, and I realized Mumbai University's Department of Education did not conduct experiments, mostly conducted descriptive research, correlational or causal comparative, or at best survey research. However, I was also working in SNDT, where there was a strong tradition of conducting experiments. So I learned how to conduct experiments. I went back to Mumbai University, and now many are also conducting experiments in Mumbai University. This is the benefit of working in different institutions, so that you learn many things, different things. And when I was in Mumbai University, I felt that experiments are useless. I don't think we should conduct them because they don't give anything special. But when I started conducting experiments or guided students to conduct experiments, I understood the beauty of them. And I also understood that experiments are valid. What is validity of an experiment? An experiment is said to be valid if it measures the extent to which the change in the dependent variable is actually because of the independent variable. then it is valid, internally valid. There is also something, so that was internal validity. There is also something known as external validity. If your findings of an experiment can be generalized to a larger setting, you can say that your experiment has external validity. If your experiment is based on a single group, pre-test, post-test design, you don't have randomization, you don't have control group, you cannot generalize your experiment to the real world, to the larger setting, and therefore external validity of such research is zero. Therefore, I'm saying as far as possible, rather avoid such researches where you don't have either a control group or a retest, or sorry, either a control group or randomization. Okay, I'll just check if there is anything in the chat. Graph 4. Wait, cause and effect are not dependent on each other. Effect is dependent on the cause. Cause is not dependent on the effect. Cause is independent variable. Effect is the dependent variable. Sample size depends solely on research question and method. Not really. If you want to generalize, your sample size has to be large. But in qualitative research, sample size may be small. In qualitative research, you may not have validity and reliability of the research instrument. However, you can conduct a dry run. So if you, before starting your actual data collection, I gave you one example of my student. She's conducting a qualitative research on higher education. So before conducting her qualitative focus group interviews, she selected one or two from her classmates and tried the interview, conducting interview on them to understand whether questions are easily understood by the participants, whether the flow of the experiment is good, whether the language she uses in the interview matches the level of student or not. So that is called a dry run. You can conduct a dry run, but in qualitative research, even if you use a observation or interview, you cannot have validity or reliability of research institution. That is purely for quantitative research. Is there any identification tools to know exactly how much sample size to be increased for getting accurate feedback and authentic research? For what kind of research are you talking about authentic results? Quantitative or qualitative? If you can give a reply, if you can give a reply, I can answer your question. I'm speaking about Mr. CHK Sharma's question. The question is not clear. You're talking about quantitative research. For quantitative research, if you want to select your sample size, go to Google and give right there sample size table for quantitative research. You will get several. If I get time after my session, I will show it. That those tables give you accurate sample size to decide about your research. I will try and show it. Now this phenomenon is more so in psychology research. They go to a field and conduct research, counseling session and conduct experiment. So they call them field research. And what research is we conduct for us, that is experimental research. But psychologists say that the kind of research that we do is field research and it's not lab research. Lab research is generally conducted by psychologists and also earlier educationists like Pavlov, who conducted research on dogs, or those learning by insight researches on chimpanzee. Then there was one trial and error research about the rat. So these are all examples of lab research, lab experiments. The experiments are conducted under very strict context and situation, artificial setting in the lab on animals, and they could be also applied to human learning. So for psychology people, those are lab experiments. All those experiments which we learned in B.Ed, trial and error method, learning by insight method. I think in the present, for the present generation, all this was not there in the syllabus. But Dr. Gayakwad and Dr. Upalani will agree, we have studied these when we were doing our B.Ed. So those are examples of lab experiment. And the kind of experiment that we do in education in classrooms are called field experiments by psychologists. For us, we don't use the term field and lab experiments. We only use the term experimental research. I mentioned it so that at least you are aware. Now questions or comments? I think I will show you how to select a sample size. Let me show you that before I start with my question answer session. Please wait. I'll just show you how to select the sample size. I'll share something immediately. Please wait for 1 or 2 minutes. See, can you see the screen now? Hello?
Yes, madam.
Now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
First column is population size. Now, if we are dealing with students, say in Pune, there were college students, college students, SY and TY students in Pune, for example. There may be at least 1 lakh students SY and TY in entire Pune, Pune Shahar and Pune Gram. So if there are at least 1 lakh students, which is here, then the corresponding, if you take at the margin of error of 95%, that is 5% margin, then your corresponding sample size next to it is 383. So your sample size should be 383. If you want 1% margin, your sample size for 1 lakh population should be 8762. But we don't go, 383 is sufficient. So you start your sample size with 450 students, because some students give incomplete data, and when you have incomplete data, you remove that. So then finally sample size you are left with after removing incomplete responses. Your sample size is 383, and you can justify by mentioning this website. That sample size of 383 has been selected based on this particular table prepared by so and so. See here, I think they have written also who has prepared. Or you can mention the website, or if there is an author written here, you can mention that. It is perfectly all right, and this will be very scientific. Talk about population size. Based on that 5% margin, if you take, then decide your sample size. Here it is for 1 lakh population, 383 sample size is adequate. Minimum 383. That's the minimum. If you go to next to 383 is 778. If you do that, it would be far better. But you can use this. Is this okay? Understood? So I'll stop sharing. Now you can ask. Let me check the chat. Nothing in the chat. Okay, now you can ask me other questions if you have. Any other question on anything else pertaining to research design in particular? No? No questions? How to determine tools in qualitative research? In qualitative research, we don't use tools, we use techniques of data collection, and generally it is observation, interview, or document analysis. What is the advantage of Likert scale? It's very easy to use, easy to construct, easy to use. Only by experimental activities. क्या पूछना चाहती है? Miss Saira Khan, आप क्या पूछना चाहती है? What do you want to ask? Only by experimental.
Ma'am, that only regarding qualitative tools.
In qualitative, we don't use tools. We use.
Okay, ma'am.
Tool.
Okay, ma'am.
So, Madam Gayakwad, shall we call it a day since they don't have questions?
Yeah, if there are no questions, are there any questions from the participants? If there are no questions, then we can end this session, today's session. Okay.
I once again thank Bahai Academy, Dr. Gayakwad, Pune University, Dr. Uplane, for inviting me to be with all of you. Thank you once again.
Yeah, so thank you very much, madam, for very beautifully explaining the various concepts of research design. Very clear, in a very clearly with very beautiful, simple examples, you have explained the concepts, the paradigms, the various components of the research designs, experimental design, and I hope the topics have been very clear to all the participants. Thank you very much once again, madam.
Thank you so much.
And I would request the participants to give the attendance in the chat box. You may please write your names in the chat box for the attendance.
I think I can leave now.
Yes, madam. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Madam, thank you very much. Very nice session.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.